Hello, my name is Cassie Kendall. For my final research paper, I did research on Alaska Native symbolic practices and how time and interaction shifted societal views of artistic representations of culture. People have been forming groups and social organizations since the beginning of humankind. In the past, the social organizations were usually based off an ethnic background, especially if the people live in a location that did not have much interaction with other groups. Roger Harrett found that studies of living groups demonstrate that a number of variables embedded in fundamental cultural patterns and practices provide basis for ethnic distinctions among the membership. As these cultures grew, so did the traditions that the people followed. Symbolic practices, like different forms of art, began to form with the societies and eventually became an intricate part of their culture. As societies advanced, their forms of expression shift and change from changes in perspectives and standpoints and from interactions with other cultures. Eventually, the original purpose behind the practice might fade, but societies often continue them with a part of the original purpose or by creating new meaning. The major shifts, some that can be seen distinctly from artifacts and others that are more discrete from a lack of written language and changes in oral tradition, do not completely change the society or the values. Shifts instead adjust how the society views and respects their values. While new views can bring stronger connections with a culture, the changed perspective can also change outside viewer standpoints as well by creating a profit out of a society's beliefs and symbolic practices. To be able to discuss changes in art over time in Alaska Native cultures, a brief definition of art needs to be formed. As Diaz-Azevedo stated, in order to know what art does, we must have a working concept of what art is. While every culture is different, they each share similar social activities based on art, even if each of those art forms vary from area to area. Today, artifacts were created in the past are often considered forms of art. Diaz-Azevedo defines an artistic object as an object taken to be any formal end product of artistic activity, whether it be a performance in sound or movement, any combination of visual, auditory, tactile, olfactory, or other sense impressions conveyed through a permanent or impermanent medium. This definition focuses on objects and activities that are purposely created for artistic reasons. However, the artifacts that are seen as art today were often tools used in the past by the culture. The medium that objects are made of also affects what each society is able to create. Materials that are readily available will provide most of the mediums. Diaz-Azevedo finds that the conditions of art in a given society may be stated as the repertoire of technology of that society, its available and prescribed media, and the particular systems of value which orient selection and organization of the qualitative aspects of experience. Reference must also be made into a tradition of a controversial specifications used, incentives, and evaluations relating to the products of artistic activity. Trade, on the other hand, allows societies to trade for materials that are not native to the area. Anthropologists and archaeologists that study various cultures determine the object's original purpose and whether the materials are naturally found in an area or traded. Without knowing the initial purpose of an object, part of the value and culture of the object is lost. Just as the purpose of the object is vital to understanding the society, cultural values, and artistic representations, the process of creating an artifact is also a critical part of the importance of the object. Oftentimes, people do not consider how the object is made and focus instead on the end product. Other times, with older artifacts, it can be difficult to determine how the object was made since directions are never left behind. Still, the end product or the function of the object masks the process to create the object. Diaz-Azevedo stated that the processes of art are obscured by emphasis upon its formal products and their value as a source of information about other things. Even more recent functional and structural approaches tend to work backward from the product of art to its functional placement in an ongoing socio-cultural system. This has severely restricted a dynamic view of the arts. They are attributed significance as byproducts or instruments of other categories of social phenomena which appear to be more amenable to analysis and structure. Political, economic, and religious activities, for example. Essentially, art can be considered the expressions of a society. Artistic representations of a society can be actual objects created from a process that holds value in a culture, ceremonies and dances that are passed from generation to generation, or the oral traditions shared within the culture. However, even if the purpose of an object from an older society is known, how that object was actually part of that culture and the role it played can never be understood. As neither culture itself nor aesthetic values are inherent in artifacts, art and the role of the artifact could not be understood in its own terms. The most intensive description, classification, and analysis of elements of form alone will fail to disclose the data necessary to a delineation of art from non-art, except for the crudest sense. Being unable to pinpoint the exact cultural value of an object should not deter people from curiosity and discovery of art and the possible values of artistic objects. Even with modern art, if the artist does or does not give the exact meaning behind their piece, every person will see a different value. Using the brief definition of art, something that was created or done with cultural values in mind, the shift of Eskimo art through their history can be followed. Historically, coastal Northwest Alaskan and Inupiat Eskimo socio-spatial and economic organization was constituted of the compound or local family unit and relations based on friendships, partnerships, or political alliances. This leads back to the idea that people will first group together based on similar opinions and viewpoints. As people group together, distinct art forms begin to develop based on their environmental surroundings. Harriet found that full artifact assemblages are characterized by ground slate implements including harpoon insert blades and ulus, pottery characterized by pots of various forms, including those with globular and situla shapes, and various tempering materials including gravel and fibers such as hair and grass. Pottery types include plain, ware, as well as types with specific decorative motifs, worked into the exterior surfaces. Bone and ivory implements include the well-known toggling harpoon head forms, as well as arrowheads of various types. The importance of the environment to Alaska Native groups is especially seen in their artwork, by using what is naturally found in nature to create artistic representation of their beliefs as well as tools used to survive. The process in which the people create is its own art form. Before contact with others, around AD 600 to 1200, the Punic culture included many of the same tools and artifacts as the Thule, including toggling harpoon heads, bone armor, and pottery. However, with some Thule residents of Alaskan coastline by AD 950, Siberian Punic culture influenced northwestern Alaskan Thule, which may be seen in artistic style elements and decorative motifs. Early Euro-American contact with Northwest Alaskan Native societies occurred from 1800 to 1848. While most strived to suppress the cultures as they were seen as inferior, Western explorers still documented what they saw. In part, this is why parts of the cultures can still be shared. Without the written histories, suppression of the symbolic practices would have completely destroyed Alaskan Native cultures. As time advanced and more societies became connected, people began to make use of their symbolic practices to trade and make money. Art is created for commodities, not for cultural value that it once represented. Bunton discussed self-commodification, which is a set of beliefs and practices in which an individual chooses to construct a marketable identity product while striving to avoid alienating him or herself. Self-commodification is a way for people to turn themselves into commodities. Their personality, culture, and what they create becomes what the person is selling. Bunton's article introduced the term commodified persona, a term used to describe tourist-heavy locations and how they gauge feedback from tourists to shape their presentations. When the artist himself emerges, he is overshadowed by his product and its non-aesthetic affinities. This can be seen in more areas than Alaska Native artwork on tourism or tourism industries. This shift is how and why art is created, however, brings up the question of whether everyone in a society agrees that their cultural value is being sold, or whether the people still believe some of their culture is too sacred to share. Fine-up Riordan uses the life of Nicholas Charles Sr. to show how art, like creating masks or building boats and houses, were always a part of his life. When Nicholas Charles Sr. might not have considered his work a form of art, the processes he used and what he created were valued by others as artistic representations of his culture. The skill to craft the items is an art form itself. Frank looked at the complexity of the herring braid done by women after the fish were cleaned and ready to dry. Frank stated, "My awakening to expertise was when her daughter, who had cut fish most of her life, talked about how knowledgeable her mother was and how she had yet to fully master the art of fish processing. The art of fish processing is all about the steps taken and knowing when to move forward to the next step. To the people in this village, even adult women who had been processing fish their whole lives were not masters. This skill the women have, or even the men's skill at hunting and fishing, are intricate parts of the society's life. What Western civilization might view as cultural art, the people of this community view as a way of survival. When Nicholas Charles Sr. was told that he could make a large profit by making masks, he declined, preferring to make masks of his own initiative and his own timetable rather in response to a specific request. This shows his respect for his culture, not the profit he can make from his traditional art. In Lee's article, another Alaska Native is viewed while describing the difficulties in following cultures versus selling art to survive. Lee examines the multifaceted role of the Alaska Federation of Natives craft fairs in the lives of Alaska Native women who have left their home villages and moved into Anchorage. The Alaska Federation of Natives craft fairs allows Alaska Natives to sell the art they create in one location to make money. While this is not much different than trading for other objects and necessities, the main difference is that the art is created specifically for gaining money. Lee found that this raises broader issues such as the evolving politicization of women traders and the growing role of market art in the articulation of political concepts. Lee, however, also explored how the Alaska Federation of Natives assists women in adjusting to urban life and taking advantage of economic opportunities when families move from rural locations. This example shows how women still respect their culture while finding a way to survive in the urban setting by using the skills they learned in their villages. Symbolic practices are a part of every culture, ancient or modern. In the modern world, different forms of art in many societies can be used to bring like-minded people together from around the world. Or, in older cultures, when interactions with other societies were limited, artistic representations were something everyone in the society practiced or appreciated. Art itself does not emerge as a distinct system of social relations and cognition, contributing in specific ways to integration, reinforcement, or change of society and its values, nor does it emerge explicitly in theory as an important vehicle for expression of these values. While art does not emerge specifically to represent each society's values explicitly, gatherings focused around an activity that a group finds aesthetic or all-encompassing of a view will bring the society closer. As civilization mature and there is more interaction between societies, there is influence from each interaction. Art begins to shift, taking on pieces from other cultures. Change is inevitable when there is communications with other societies. Knowledge and ideals are spread from the first interactions. While this influence can be good with the spread of new information, these interactions with other societies have also created a conflict of whether culture symbolic items can be used to make profits, or if the people are interested in keeping their practices sacred by withholding from outsiders. Societies need to discover within their groups how much they consider is too much marketization by considering if the profits of sharing their culture outweigh the cost of becoming a sellout of their cultural values. Thank you for listening and viewing my presentation on my final paper.